For people who interview potential candidates for higher level positions, what was the worst interview you conducted? In the middle of an interview I had a few years ago, my soon-to-be manager thanked me for dressing up and explained to me the guy he interviewed the day before showed up in a mesh t-shirt lol. I was an interviewee at a place on a Friday and showed up in a suit and tie. The manager was in business casual, but the head of the department I'd be working for walked in a bit late in flip-flops, jean shorts, and a shirt with holes in it, the unintentional kind of holes. Oh, and a hemp surfer style necklace. What I didn't know was that it was Casual Friday and it was a bit of a contentious topic among the developers who felt having a dress code at all wasn't warranted. It was a good fit. I spent several years there. She only spoke in high-end corporate speak and non-answers. I didn't have any clue about her as the person leaving that interview, but could tell she was the absolute wrong fit. Of course she was hired and has tanked that program. I swear she has dirt on someone high up, otherwise she would have been removed. Senior engineer role, in person, right before the pandemic. Guy kept steering all his answers to technical questions back to the time he'd spent with Peace Corps. After the third time, I just let him ramble. When we were done, I offered to toss his empty cup and he was weirdly protective of it, like insisted it was too much trouble and I could just show him the kitchen on the way out. Sure, whatever. Guy washes his paper cup before throwing it out and leaves. In our follow-up meeting to discuss the candidate, our director was hissed because the guy wouldn't stay on topic, and if he didn't know any better, he'd think the candidate was drunk. And then it clicked as to why he'd been so odd with the cup. We did not make an offer. That or he's committed a serious crime and thought the interview was a setup for DNA collection. I interviewed a guy for a head of marketing position many years ago. This guy shows up to the interview and is immediately smug as hell. We haven't even started yet. He refuses to turn on his camera, instantly remarks how he worked for Facebook, and let it be known that he's the real deal. I asked him what are the channels for video game marketing and he responded with I don't know, does it matter? Astonished, we asked him how he would approach marketing different platforms, and he responded with lots of money. I asked him if he realized we were an indie company, and he was like that doesn't matter. Halfway through the interview, the CEO himself finally begged me to stop the interview. We contacted our recruiting firm and told them he was the single worst candidate we had ever encountered. They dropped him as a client because apparently this wasn't even the first time he was a terrible interview. I still remember his name. He ended up going back to Facebook. Seemed like he tested the market, realized he wasn't shit, and then went back home where he could blend in as a useless nepo baby. I interviewed a guy for a high-level management position for the company I worked for. Attire was supposed to be business professional. He showed up in a Hawaiian shirt, jeans, and flip-flops because he thought this interview was just a formality and he believed his supposed reputation in the industry just preceded him. I had no idea who he was. When he realized we were actually asking questions, he just said, "Trust me, I'm the guy for the job," over and over and over again. It became a running joke for all of us when we'd get a new assignment. "You're not that guy, pal." I once interviewed a woman who was a Dolly Parton impersonator in her spare time. No word of a lie, she asked what the hours were. I told her they weren't set as such, reasonably flexible, and that I was more interested into what she put into those hours than the hours she did. She replied, "Not 9 to 5, then?" and proceeded to start singing that ducking song. I swear she was ducking crackers, to be honest. I once set up an interview with someone for a lead position at a company I've since left. Right from the start, they sent me a snarky email saying, "If you're going to post a job, at least make sure the people you mention actually work there." I was confused, so I asked them to clarify. They responded, claiming the name of the company's founder director listed in the ad wasn't accurate and that no one went by that name in the list of employees on the website. Confused, I double checked our website and right at the very top of our Meet the Team page has the name and photo of the company director, which matched the name listed in the ad. I therefore went back to the candidate and confirmed that the name of the director on the job ad was indeed correct and apologized if they misread this. They responded, completely inacknowledging my response to confirm their interview time. Weird, but okay. Fast forward a few days to the interviews and we are conducting the initial rounds via Zoom. The candidate from the email tried to join the meeting 45 minutes before their scheduled time while I was interviewing another candidate, so I declined their request to enter, and intended on giving them a call once finished to see if something happened they needed to meet earlier. Before the other interview even ended, I received a rambling email where they berated me for not letting them in early and threatened to report me to company director's name. I simply replied, "We don't have anyone by that name working here," and then blocked them. Edit. This was during COVID when Zoom was just starting to take off. My boss and I interviewed a woman who spoke too long about her many cats, and when asked about her previous job began to cry. My instincts said she might need some time to sort things out before diving into another job, and my boss hired her. I was flown up to train her for 2 weeks at great expense for the company and effort from me. She quit 6 months into the job. She started crying during the interview and still got hired? Jesus. I'm a senior engineer at our firm and often sit in on interviews to gauge technical prowess. We had some kid come in fresh out of college, and it was evident he read or was given some advice to come off demanding the "if you know exactly what you want people will respect you" type of thing. It was almost comical. He came in and said things like, "Look, we all know the back and forth. The bottom line is I'll help progress this business and take you in new directions." He was also saying things like, "I'll need you to stock Pete's dark roast coffee in the kitchen. I like my lunch time around 2 p.m. I need vacation time available immediately." MR. Confidence turned into MR. Confidently rejected, on the spot. At one point my boss even asked, "Are you always like this or are you just nervous? Lol, I never saw a face sink like that so fast." We even gave him pointers to tone it down or he's going to have a really hard time out there. I asked an engineer, "What do you love about engineering?" and they paused for a long moment and then told me they didn't love anything about it. I panicked and tried to save it for them and said, "Oh, what about the team you're on right now?" and they said, "Oh, my team is great. But I don't think I want to be a software engineer anymore. I don't think I like it at all." At this point the interview was dead, and we had a policy not to end early. So I asked them, "What's something you do love?" and we talked about knitting for 45 minutes. It was really fun. They didn't get the job. We were interviewing for the art director position at a 50-person video game studio. A candidate had 27 mistakes on his resume: typos, formatting errors, and incomplete sentences. I brought this up to the studio general manager and he said he's dealing with art. How much is he going to have to write? They hired him, in part because he'd done one of the voices on the original Warcraft game. Our studio closed 5 months later. I interviewed this candidate for a startup. Every time he didn't know how to answer a question about his previous experience, he'd claim he couldn't because of an NDA. I gave him the benefit of the doubt until he finally admitted that he had put something on his resume just so that he gets calls from recruiters. But this wasn't even the worst part. At the very end, he thanked me for my time and then said, "I hope to work here at X." X was not my company's name. It's not like he mixed us up with some other company, he got it wrong. And I corrected him, and he just casually said, "Oh, that's what you're called," so it wasn't a genuine slip of the tongue either. We didn't really have a policy for ending an interview early when there's no hope at all, so that was a colossal waste of my precious time. Senior engineer position. She just straight up typed out questions in ChatGPT and read them verbatim. She told us, "I don't know what KQL is," but then gave us a dictionary answer about 3 seconds later on log analytics workspaces, and the basis of KQL as a language. She wasn't even good at cheating. My company has started to get worried about this. We've had graduates get hired who turned out to have very little actual knowledge of the subject they purportedly got a degree in. Lots of cheating going on in college, especially where coursework is a good chunk of the result. I was hiring for a role, and someone reached out to me via LinkedIn to let me know they'd applied. Totally fine. It turns out he was the son of a former co-worker, which was interesting to know, but not really relevant to the hiring process. I reviewed his resume, but unfortunately, He didn't have the experience needed for the role, his background was in completely different industries. Since I used to work with his mom, I gave him that feedback, and he was totally understanding. His mother, my former co-worker, then reached out to me, pleading her son's case. She even said she'd personally fill in any gaps in his knowledge and coach him through the role, insisting that I give him a chance. Two big problems with this. Having your mom reach out like this makes it seem like you can't stand on your own in the workplace. His mom and I now work for direct competitors. There's proprietary information involved, and she would potentially have access to it. That's a major conflict. Bottom line, don't have your mom reach out for you in a job application. And definitely don't bring her with you. Not me, but my mother. Interviewed a guy for their chief safety and security position. They asked why he was leaving his last job after 15+ years. He responds completely seriously that he was actually forced to resign shortly after he sent in his resume because he neglected a final security check at his facility, which resulted in a fire. They asked for more details and learned that his negligence led to loss of over $2 mil for his former employer, and because no one was hurt they made a deal that he would resign and forfeit his severance package to boot. When they asked why they should hire him, considering that information, he replied that it was just one mistake so they shouldn't take it so seriously. 9-10 years ago we were hiring for a CFO. The person came from the third largest civil engineering contractor in the United States. Total package was over $800K. Our office is suit and tie, totally corporate. Presidential and mayor candidates have been in our office. Just to give an idea on the type of office it was, guy walks in for the CFO interview in sandals, flip-flops, shorts, fell asleep at the chair waiting for the interview. Safe to say, he did not get the job. The person was highly recommended. His name is well known in the industry. We couldn't believe it. I did meet him a few years back, and he fell asleep at a fundraiser. For a while I had managerial oversight over our call center. Without giving away too much personal info, we take over 5,000 inbound per day, with between 500 to 500 outbound calls performed by our staff depending on season and if anything is broken. Finance related. I'm interviewing someone for a manager role. Not a supervisor, but the person who all of the supervisors would report to. Position needed 5-7 years experience, with at least 3 years of call center time, at least 2 years of management or supervising experience, all the good stuff. It's a Zoom interview because this is a couple years ago, but this person is visibly drunk. Slurring words, head drooping, the works. I do the introduction, and turn on the recording, and they start off by asking if they'll have to talk to customers because they refuse to talk to customers and they told the last guy that. I mean, yeah, you will probably handle some escalations, which I said. They swear audibly and say something like okay fine, but I'll need to negotiate a higher starting. I've never taken calls before. What? A waiter or a bartender clips into their background at one point, meaning that they were doing this interview in public. I ask about it and they say they don't have internet at their home right now. Okay fine, whatever, and they may need to work out of a coffee shop for the first few months. I say that's not possible because we deal with sensitive information. You need a private location. They then ask me if the company is going to pay for their housing, which I say we can't do. It only went downhill from here. They were probably minutes from faceplanting and passing out before I ended the call. And because you know this is coming, 3 days after I had HR send out the standard thank you for your interest but we've decided to go in a different direction email and call, they accused me of racism, gender discrimination. I sent over the recording of the interview to legal with a very big smile on my face. I've been told that legal still shows it to newbies in their department when they need a laugh. Was interviewing this guy for an engineering position. It was going pretty well. He already had some background in the industry, was multilingual, seemed pretty funny. Things were looking pretty good for this guy. We bring the plant manager in to talk to him and he starts getting agitated. Then he takes off his shoes and socks. We're like, dude, you okay? He says. This guy keeps messing with me, and points over the shoulder that has no one behind him. Then he stands up and acts like he's going to remove his pants. and we stop him. Obviously he's having some sort of episode, but he's gone no communication on us. I run to get him a bottle of water and just see if we can keep him calm until he rides it out. About 5 minutes later, he shakes his head, looks at us, and says, "So when can I start?" I showed him out and said we'd be in touch. Next day, the guy shows up again apologizing for missing the appointment the day before and wants to see if we'll interview him today. He did not get the job. I actually had my stalker come into my office responding to a hiring notice I'd posted on LinkedIn, after the position was already filled. He was just trying to get access to me. Security escorted him out. He ended up getting deported after police paid a visit to his actual workplace.